December 25, 1996, 5:52 a.m. A mother's scream shattered the silence of an upscale Boulder, Colorado neighborhood. 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey, America's little beauty queen, was missing. On the kitchen staircase lay a ransom note, 2.5 pages long, demanding $118,000. But this wasn't a kidnapping. 8 hours later, JonBenét's body would be found in her own basement. And for the next decade, one woman would bear the weight of America's suspicion. Her name was Patsy Ramsey. This is the story of her final interview, the words she spoke just months before her death, and the confession that never came, but perhaps was never needed. This is True Crime Vault, where we unlock the cases that refuse to be forgotten. The JonBenét Ramsey case has captivated and horrified the world for nearly 3 decades. Tonight, we examine the most controversial figure in this tragedy through the lens of her last recorded words. A mother defending her innocence, a woman battling cancer, a family torn apart by America's judgment. We're going to walk through every piece of evidence, every testimony, every twist in this investigation that became one of the most publicized murders in American history. Before we dive deeper into Patsy Ramsey's final testimony, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. Here at True Crime Vault, we bring you in-depth investigations into cases that shaped criminal history. We don't just report, we analyze. We don't just retell, we investigate. New episodes every week, diving into the evidence, the interviews, the testimonies that matter. And make sure you hit that notification bell, because this case, like so many we cover, has layers that most people never see. Now, drop a comment below and tell me, do you think Patsy Ramsey was involved in her daughter's death? Or was she, as she claimed until her dying breath, an innocent mother destroyed by tragedy and accusation? Let's find out together. To understand Patsy Ramsey's final interview, we need to go back to the beginning. To understand the woman, we need to understand her life before December 26, 1996. Patricia Ann Paugh was born on December 29, 1956, in Parkersburg, West Virginia. She grew up in a middle-class family, the daughter of Nedra and Don Paugh. From an early age, Patsy was driven, ambitious, and poised. She entered the world of beauty pageants as a teenager, competing in local and state competitions. In 1977, at age 20, she won the title of Miss West Virginia. The crown was more than just a trophy. It represented discipline, presentation, confidence, skills that would define much of her adult life. She attended West Virginia University, where she earned a degree in journalism. She was intelligent, well-spoken, and had plans for a career in media or public relations. But life took a different direction when she met JonBenét Ramsey. John Ramsey was a businessman, older than Patsy by 13 years, divorced with 3 children from his first marriage. He had founded Access Graphics, a computer services company that would eventually become a billion-dollar subsidiary of Lockheed Martin. When John and Patsy met in the early 1980s, he was building his empire, and she was looking for stability and family. They married in 1980. Patsy embraced her role as a wife and stepmother, but she also maintained her own identity. She was active in social circles, involved in charity work, and eventually became a mother herself. Burke was born in 1987, and JonBenét followed in 1990. The family settled in Boulder, Colorado in 1991, purchasing a large Tudor-style home at 755 15th Street. The house had 15 rooms, sprawling across multiple floors, with a basement that included storage rooms, a boiler room, and a small wine cellar. This house would become the most scrutinized crime scene in American history. But in the early 1990s, it was simply home. Patsy threw herself into motherhood with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She enrolled JonBenét in beauty pageants, following in her own footsteps. Critics would later accuse Patsy of living vicariously through her daughter, of sexualizing a child, of creating unhealthy pressure. But those who knew Patsy personally described a different picture. They described a mother who supported her daughter's interests, who made costumes and practiced routines because JonBenét loved performing. They described a little girl who lit up on stage, who begged to compete, who thrived in the spotlight. JonBenét won multiple titles, including Little Miss Colorado and National Tiny Miss Beauty. She had blonde hair, bright eyes, and a smile that cameras loved. She sang, she danced, She performed with natural charisma. But she was also just a kid. She played with dolls. She loved animals. She rode her bike. She fought with her brother like any sibling. The pageant world was one part of her life, not the entirety of it. But after her death, it would define her public image. Every photo released to the media showed JonBenét in makeup, hair teased, wearing sequin dresses. The public saw a miniature adult, a sexualized child, a disturbing image. They didn't see the little girl in jeans and a t-shirt playing in the backyard. That selective narrative shaped how people viewed the case and how they viewed Patsy. In 1993, Patsy faced her first major health crisis. She was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. The prognosis was grim. Survival rates for advanced ovarian cancer are low. But Patsy was a fighter. She underwent aggressive treatment, including a complete hysterectomy and multiple rounds of chemotherapy. The treatment was brutal. She lost her hair, lost weight, suffered through nausea and fatigue. But she survived. By 1995, she was in remission. She had beaten cancer. Friends and family described this period as transformative for Patsy. She became more focused on family, more appreciative of every moment. She became more involved in her church, St. John's Episcopal in Boulder. She talked openly about her faith, about how it sustained her through the illness. She felt blessed. She felt grateful. She had her health, her husband, her 2 children, and a beautiful life in Boulder. Christmas 1996 should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the beginning of her nightmare. Christmas Day 1996 was unseasonably warm in Boulder. The Ramsey family attended services at St. John's Episcopal Church in the morning. Reverend Roll Hoverstock, who would later become a key figure in the investigation and a supporter of the family, led the service. The Ramseys sat together, sang hymns, celebrated the holiday. That afternoon, they visited friends. In the evening, they attended a Christmas party at the home of Fleet and Priscilla White, longtime friends of the family. The party was festive, filled with families, children playing, adults socializing. JonBenét played with other kids, ate dinner, participated in gift exchanges. Burke played video games and hung out with friends. John and Patsy mingled, enjoying the evening. They left the party around 9:30 p.m., later than intended because they needed to be up early for a 6:30 a.m. flight to Michigan the next morning. The family had plans to visit John's older children from his first marriage and then fly to their vacation home in Charlevoix. When they arrived home around 9:45 p.m., the children were tired. According to Patsy's account, JonBenét had fallen asleep in the car. Patsy carried her upstairs, a detail that would later be questioned because JonBenét weighed about 45 pounds, and Patsy was not a large woman. But mothers often find strength when it comes to their children. Patsy said she took JonBenét to her bedroom on the second floor, changed her into long underwear without fully waking her, and tucked her into bed. She initially stated she put a red turtleneck on JonBenét, but later said it might have been a white shirt. This inconsistency would be used against her. Burke went to his room. John stayed downstairs briefly, locking doors and checking the house. Patsy went upstairs to the master bedroom on the 3rd floor. She laid out clothes for the morning, packed last-minute items, and went to bed. John joined her shortly after. According to their statements, they were asleep by 10:30 p.m. The house alarm system was not set that night. John would later explain that they often didn't set it when they were home, that it was more for when they were away. This decision would haunt them. At some point during the night, something happened in that house. Something that would destroy a family and captivate a nation. The exact timeline remains disputed to this day. But we know this. JonBenét Ramsey was alive when she went to bed on Christmas night. And by the early morning hours of December 26th, she was dead. The question that has tormented investigators, the media, and the public for decades is simple and impossible. What happened between those 2 points? And who was responsible? 5:52 a.m., December 26th, 1996. Patsy Ramsey woke up, according to her account, and began getting ready for the flight. She put on the same clothes she had worn the night before, black velvet pants and a red sweater, because they were already laid out, and she was in a hurry. She went downstairs, intending to check on last-minute preparations and wake the children. As she descended the spiral staircase, she saw papers on the floor. 3 pages, laid out in a specific pattern on the wooden steps. She picked them up. The first lines were enough to send her into panic. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession, Patsy screamed. She ran to JonBenét's room. The bed was empty. She screamed again, calling for John. He rushed from the bedroom, asked what was wrong. Patsy showed him the note, barely able to speak. John read it quickly. The note stated that JonBenet had been kidnapped, that the kidnappers wanted $118,000 in cash, and that if they contacted police or anyone else, JonBenet would be beheaded. The note provided specific instructions for delivering the ransom. John ran to Burke's room. Burke was still asleep. John checked other rooms, looking for JonBenet, hoping this was somehow a misunderstanding, but she was nowhere to be found. Patsy grabbed the phone and dialed 911 at 5:52 a.m. The call was recorded, and it has been analyzed thousands of times by law enforcement, linguists, audio experts, and armchair detectives. Patsy's voice on the call is high-pitched, panicked, breathless. "We have a kidnapping. Hurry, please," she told the dispatcher. The dispatcher, Kim Archuleta, asked for details. Patsy said there was a ransom note, that her daughter was missing, that she needed police immediately. The call lasted 5 minutes and 52 seconds. During the call, Patsy can be heard speaking to John in the background, asking him what to do. At the end of the call, there is a moment that has been endlessly debated. After Patsy thought she had hung up, the line remained open for a few more seconds. Audio experts claim to hear 3 voices in the background: John, Patsy, and possibly Burke. One expert claimed to hear Burke's voice saying, "What did you find?" This would contradict the Ramsey statement that Burke remained asleep and was not aware of the situation until later. However, the audio is unclear, and interpretations vary widely. The 911 call ended, and the Boulder police were dispatched immediately. Officer Rick French arrived at the Ramsey home at 5:59 a.m., 7 minutes after the 911 call. He was the first responding officer. Patsy met him at the door, still hysterical, holding the ransom note. Officer French read the note, noted the warnings about not contacting police, and began to assess the situation. He asked John and Patsy basic questions. When did you last see JonBenet? Did you hear anything during the night? Are there any signs of forced entry? John showed Officer French a broken window in the basement. He explained that he had broken it himself months earlier when he was locked out of the house. The window had never been properly repaired. Underneath the window was a Samsonite suitcase, positioned as if someone might have used it as a step. This immediately suggested a possible entry or exit point. Officer French conducted a quick search of the house, starting with the main floors and moving to the basement. In the basement, he checked several rooms. He approached the wine cellar, a small room with a white wooden door. He tried the handle. It appeared to be latched or locked from the outside. He did not force it open. This decision would later be heavily criticized. If he had opened that door, JonBenet's body would have been discovered within the first hour, potentially preserving evidence and changing the entire trajectory of the investigation. But Officer French moved on, continuing his search of other areas. Within 30 minutes, the Ramsey home was filling with people. This was the second major error in the early investigation. The house should have been immediately secured as a potential crime scene. Instead, it became a gathering place. Patsy called friends and family for support. Reverend Roll Hoverstock arrived. Fleet and Priscilla White came from their home. John and Barbara Fernie arrived. These were close friends, people the Ramseys trusted. Their presence was meant to provide comfort, but from an investigative standpoint, it was a disaster. Multiple people moved through the house, touching surfaces, using bathrooms, making coffee in the kitchen. The crime scene was being contaminated by well-meaning friends and family. Additional officers arrived. Detective Linda Arndt came to take over the investigation around 8 a.m. By this time, the house was full of activity. Arndt tried to manage the chaos, but she was essentially alone, waiting for backup and for the kidnapper to call with instructions. According to the ransom note, the kidnappers would contact John between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Everyone waited. The phone was monitored. John was instructed not to answer immediately, to let it ring, so that police could prepare recording equipment. But 8 a.m. came and went, no call. 9 a.m. passed, still no call. 10 a.m. arrived, nothing. The deadline passed with no contact from any kidnapper. As the morning stretched on, the mood in the house shifted from panicked hope to confused dread. If this was a kidnapping, why weren't the kidnappers calling? Detective Arndt was growing increasingly uneasy. She had requested additional officers, FBI agents, forensic teams, but for various reasons they had not yet arrived in force. She was essentially managing a potential kidnapping investigation alone. Around 1 p.m., Arndt made a decision. She instructed John Ramsey and Fleet White to conduct another search of the house, top to bottom, looking for anything unusual, anything that might have been missed. She later said she was trying to keep John occupied, to give him something to do during the agonizing wait. John and Fleet started in the basement. They checked the train room, the boiler room, the storage areas. Then they approached the wine cellar door, the same door Officer French had checked hours earlier. John tried the handle. This time, it opened easily. The room was dark. John flipped on a light, but it was dim. He stepped inside. And there, in the corner of the small room, covered by a white blanket, was a shape. John approached. He pulled back the blanket, and he saw his daughter. JonBenét was lying on her back. Her arms were raised above her head, wrists loosely bound with white cord. Around her neck was a garrote, a cord attached to a broken paintbrush handle, tightened around her throat. Duct tape covered her mouth. Her skin was pale, almost blue. Her body was cold. John Ramsey let out a sound that Fleet White later described as not human. John ripped the duct tape from JonBenét's mouth. He untied the cord from her wrists. He picked up his daughter and carried her upstairs. Fleet White tried to stop him, shouting that he shouldn't move the body, that this was a crime scene. But John wasn't thinking about evidence. He was a father holding his dead child. He carried JonBenét to the living room and laid her on the floor. Detective Arndt rushed over. She checked for a pulse, though it was obvious JonBenét was dead. The body was in rigor mortis. The skin was cold to the touch. JonBenét had been dead for hours. Patsy saw her daughter's body and collapsed. She fell to the floor, screaming, sobbing, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Friends rushed to her side, trying to comfort her, but there was no comfort possible. Reverend Hoverstock knelt beside Patsy, praying, holding her. The scene was chaos. Detective Arndt called for backup, for the coroner, for crime scene investigators. But the damage was done. The body had been moved. The crime scene had been compromised. The investigation was already on shaky ground. Within hours, the focus of the investigation began to shift. Boulder police detectives arrived. The FBI sent agents. The house was finally secured, but much too late. Evidence had been contaminated. The initial search had missed the body for 7 hours. People had walked through the house all morning. And now, with JonBenét found dead in the basement rather than kidnapped and taken away, the ransom note made no sense. Why would kidnappers write a ransom note, leave it on the stairs, but never leave the house with the victim? Why would they kill JonBenét in the basement and then carefully cover her body with a blanket? Why would they take the time to construct an elaborate garrote when simpler methods of murder were available? Why did the ransom note demand exactly $118,000, the amount of John Ramsey's recent bonus? How did kidnappers know that figure? These questions led investigators to a disturbing conclusion. This might not be a kidnapping at all. This might be a staged crime scene. And if it was staged, the most likely suspects were the people in the house that night, the Ramsey family. The ransom note became the centerpiece of the investigation. It was unlike any ransom note investigators had ever seen. Most ransom notes are brief, to the point, written quickly. This note was 2.5 pages long, 376 words, written on paper, taken from a notepad inside the Ramsey home. The notepad was found in the kitchen, along with the pen used to write it. A practice version of the first line, starting with Mr. and Mrs. R, was also found on a page in the same notepad, suggesting the author had started to write the note, changed their mind, and started over. The note itself was full of unusual elements. It began formally. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. It referenced John's business specifically. We respect your business, but not the country that it serves. It demanded $118,000, a very specific and relatively small amount for a millionaire's daughter. It contained phrases that seemed to come from movies. "Don't try to grow a brain" is a line from the film Speed. "Use that good Southern common sense of yours" seemed oddly personal and specific. The note contained detailed instructions for delivering the ransom, including demands for specific denominations of bills. It was signed SBTC, initials that have never been conclusively explained. Most significantly, handwriting experts were brought in to analyze the note. Patsy Ramsey was asked to provide multiple handwriting samples, both requested and disguised. She complied, providing dozens of samples under various conditions. The results were deeply controversial. 4 out of 6 handwriting experts hired by Boulder police stated that Patsy could not be eliminated as the author of the note. This did not mean she definitely wrote it, but it meant her handwriting shared enough similarities with the note that she remained a possible author. 2 experts said she could be eliminated. Outside experts hired by the Ramsey family's attorneys said definitively that Patsy did not write the note. John Ramsey's handwriting was eliminated by all experts. Burke Ramsey, at 9 years old, was also eliminated. No other person's handwriting was conclusively matched to the note. So if Patsy didn't write it, who did? And if she did write it, under what circumstances? Was it before JonBenét's death, part of a planned staging? Or was it written in a panic after an accident, an attempt to create a kidnapping scenario to cover up something else? The handwriting evidence was frustratingly inconclusive, but it was enough to keep Patsy at the center of suspicion. The autopsy of JonBenét Ramsey was performed on December 27, 1996, by Dr. John Meyer, the Boulder County coroner. The findings were disturbing and complex. The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with cranial cerebral trauma. JonBenét had suffered a massive blow to her head, causing an 8.5-inch linear skull fracture on the right side. The blow also caused a contusion on her brain. However, there was very little external evidence of this injury. No significant scalp bruising or bleeding, suggesting the blow was delivered with significant force but may have been cushioned by her hair or delivered with a smooth object. Medical examiners estimated that JonBenét survived this head injury for approximately 45 minutes to 2 hours before she died. This was determined by the presence of a small amount of brain swelling, indicating she was alive after the injury but did not survive long enough for significant swelling to occur. During this period, while she was unconscious and dying from the head injury, the garrote was applied to her neck. The garrote was not a simple ligature. It was a sophisticated device made from white cord tied to a broken piece of Patsy's paintbrush, which had been found in her art supplies in the basement. The cord was wrapped around JonBenét's neck, and the paintbrush handle was used as a toggle, allowing the perpetrator to tighten the cord by twisting the handle. The garrote caused deep furrows in JonBenét's neck, indicating significant pressure. Petechial hemorrhaging in her eyes indicated asphyxiation. The construction of this device raised questions. It suggested planning, knowledge, deliberateness. It was not consistent with a panicked parent trying to cover up an accident. Unless, some theorized, it was part of an elaborate staging meant to point away from the family. The autopsy also revealed other disturbing findings. JonBenét showed signs of vaginal trauma. Dr. Meyer noted evidence of chronic inflammation and irritation in the vaginal area. He also noted acute trauma on the night of her death. This finding was explosive and controversial. Some experts interpreted this as evidence of long-term sexual abuse. Other experts said the findings were consistent with normal childhood irritation, or could be explained by improper wiping, bubble baths, or other innocent causes. The debate over this evidence became heated and divisive. If JonBenét had been sexually abused prior to her death, it suggested a perpetrator with ongoing access to her. This could point to a family member or someone very close to the family. However, if the findings were misinterpreted or overstated, it could lead investigators down a false path. The unidentified male DNA found in JonBenét's underwear and under her fingernails added another layer to this question. Could the DNA belong to someone who had been abusing her? Or was it transferred DNA from innocent sources? JonBenét's hands had been loosely tied with the same white cord used in the garrote. The bindings were not tight enough to restrain a struggling child, leading some to believe they were applied after death or as part of staging. Her mouth had been covered with duct tape, which John had removed before bringing her upstairs. The duct tape had been tested for fingerprints, but yielded no usable results. JonBenét was wearing white long underwear with the word Wednesday printed on them, even though it was Thursday night going into Friday morning. She was also wearing an oversized pair of Bloomingdale's underwear, several sizes too large for her. These underwear were from a package Patsy had purchased as a gift for a relative. but had been opened and were in JonBenét's drawer. The oversized underwear suggested JonBenét or someone else had redressed her after death. These details painted a picture of a crime that was both violent and strangely meticulous. Whoever killed JonBenét had taken time to construct a garrote, time to write a ransom note, time to stage a scene. This suggested either a very calculating intruder or a family member desperately trying to cover up what had happened. As the days after JonBenét's death turned into weeks, Boulder police became increasingly focused on the Ramsey family as suspects. The prevailing theory, particularly among certain lead detectives, was that Patsy had struck JonBenét during a late-night confrontation, causing the fatal head injury. The theory suggested that JonBenét had wet the bed, a problem she occasionally had, and Patsy, exhausted from the busy holiday and facing an early morning flight, had lost her temper. In a moment of rage or frustration, Patsy struck JonBenét, perhaps pushing her into a bathtub or against a hard surface, causing the skull fracture. Realizing what she had done and finding JonBenét unconscious but still alive, Patsy panicked. She woke John, and together they made a decision to stage the scene. They constructed the garrote to suggest a stranger had killed JonBenét. They wrote the ransom note to create a kidnapping scenario. They placed JonBenét's body in the wine cellar and then discovered her hours later. This theory attempted to explain all the unusual evidence: the ransom note written on Patsy's notepad, the lack of forced entry, the fact that JonBenét was found in the house rather than taken away, the staging elements of the garrote and bindings. However, this theory required believing that parents, in a moment of panic after accidentally killing their child, would have the presence of mind and the emotional detachment to strangle their daughter with a garrote, write a lengthy ransom note, and maintain a cover-up for hours, including calling 911 and allowing police and friends into their home. It required believing that John, a successful businessman with no criminal history, would go along with such a plan. It required believing that both parents were such skilled actors that they could convincingly play the role of devastated parents for years afterward. Many people found this theory plausible. Others found it absurd. The Boulder police investigation was troubled from the start. The department was small, primarily dealing with property crimes and minor offenses. A child murder of this complexity was beyond their experience. Mistakes were made. The crime scene was compromised. The body was moved. Evidence collection was delayed. Key witnesses were not separated and interviewed immediately. The Ramseys were allowed to leave Colorado and return to Atlanta within days of JonBenét's death, taking Burke with them. By the time detectives wanted formal interviews, the Ramseys had hired lawyers and were no longer cooperating openly. This created frustration and suspicion among investigators. Innocent people don't lawyer up immediately, the thinking went. Innocent people cooperate fully. But criminal defense attorneys will tell you this is terrible advice. Innocent people should always have legal representation, especially in a case where they are potential suspects. Anything said without counsel can be misinterpreted or used against them. The Ramseys were wealthy enough to afford top legal representation, and they used it. This created a divide. Police felt the Ramseys were hiding behind lawyers and refusing to help find their daughter's killer. The Ramseys felt they were being railroaded by incompetent investigators who had decided they were guilty and were ignoring evidence of an intruder. The media circus surrounding the case made everything worse. JonBenét's pageant photos were released to the press, creating a national obsession with the case. The image of a 6-year-old in full makeup, wearing revealing costumes, performing for judges, disturbed many Americans. Questions were raised about whether child beauty pageants were appropriate, whether they sexualized children, whether they created dangerous situations. Patsy was vilified as a stage mother who pushed her daughter too hard, who lived vicariously through JonBenét, who couldn't handle anything less than perfection. Tabloid magazines published speculative articles suggesting Patsy had killed JonBenét in a fit of rage over bedwetting or pageant pressure. Television shows devoted hours to analyzing every detail of the case, often with little regard for accuracy. The Ramsey family became America's most famous suspects, tried and convicted in the court of public opinion long before any formal charges were filed. John and Patsy tried to fight back. They gave limited interviews, always with attorneys present. They appeared on CNN in January 1997, less than a month after JonBenét's death, to publicly proclaim their innocence. They looked stiff, awkward, uncomfortable. Critics said they showed no emotion, that they didn't act like grieving parents. Supporters said they were clearly traumatized, that grief doesn't have a single expression, that people process tragedy differently. The interview did little to change public opinion. If anything, it reinforced suspicions for those who already doubted the Ramseys. In April 1997, 4 months after JonBenét's death, the Ramseys agreed to separate interviews with Boulder police detectives. The interviews were conducted in Broomfield, Colorado, a neutral location. John and Patsy were interviewed separately, each with their attorneys present. The interviews lasted for hours. Detectives pressed them on inconsistencies, on timelines, on the ransom note, on their knowledge of the house layout, on their relationship with JonBenet. Patsy repeated the same account she had given from the beginning. She found the note. She called 911. She didn't write the note. She didn't hurt her daughter. She had no idea who did. Detectives challenged her, asking about the pineapple found in JonBenét's stomach. A bowl of fresh pineapple was found on the kitchen table the morning of December 26th. Burke and John's fingerprints were on the bowl. Patsy said she didn't serve pineapple that night, didn't know where it came from. Had JonBenet come downstairs after being put to bed? Had someone else been in the kitchen? Patsy had no answers. Detectives asked about the Bloomingdale's underwear JonBenet was wearing. Patsy confirmed she had purchased a package of them as a gift, but they were supposed to be unwrapped. Why was JonBenet wearing underwear several sizes too large? Patsy couldn't explain it. She suggested maybe JonBenet had taken them from the package herself, or maybe she had grabbed the wrong pair in the drawer. It was a weak explanation, and detectives noted it. Detectives asked about the red turtleneck Patsy said she put on JonBenet, but JonBenet was found in a white shirt. Patsy corrected herself, saying she must have misremembered, that it was late, that she was tired, that trauma affects memory. These were small inconsistencies, the kind that happen in any high-stress recollection of events, but they accumulated. And to detectives already suspicious of the Ramseys, they looked like lies. In May 1997, Patsy agreed to undergo polygraph testing. Polygraph results are not admissible in court, and many experts question their reliability, but they can be used as an investigative tool. The test was administered by a polygrapher hired by the Ramseys' attorneys, not by police, which raised questions about objectivity. According to the Ramseys team, Patsy passed the test. She was asked direct questions. Did you inflict any injuries on JonBenet that caused her death? Did you write the ransom note? Did you know JonBenet was in the basement when you called 911? To all questions, she answered no, and the polygrapher concluded she was telling the truth. However, Boulder police did not accept these results, stating that the test was not conducted under their supervision and could not be considered reliable. The polygraph controversy highlighted the growing distrust between the Ramseys and law enforcement. Each side questioned the other's motives and methods. Meanwhile, the investigation continued. Boulder police were pursuing the family theory, but other investigators, particularly some FBI agents and independent forensic experts, were looking at evidence that pointed away from the Ramseys. The unknown male DNA was a significant issue. If it belonged to an intruder, it was game-changing evidence. But at the time, DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. The profile was incomplete, not enough for a definitive identification, and there were questions about when and how it was deposited. Could it be transferred DNA from the clothing manufacturing process? Could it have been left innocently before the night of the murder? These questions prevented the DNA from clearing the Ramseys definitively at the time. A grand jury was convened in September 1998 to hear evidence in the JonBenet Ramsey case. Grand juries are investigative tools used to determine whether there is enough evidence to charge someone with a crime. They operate in secret, hearing testimony from witnesses, reviewing evidence, and deliberating without public oversight. The grand jury in the Ramsey case heard from over 30 witnesses and reviewed hundreds of pieces of evidence over the course of 13 months. Patsy Ramsey testified before the grand jury. She was questioned extensively without her attorneys in the room, though she was allowed to consult with them during breaks. She was asked about every aspect of the case, every inconsistency, every piece of evidence. She maintained her innocence throughout. John also testified, as did Burke, though Burke's testimony was limited due to his age. In October 1999, the grand jury concluded its deliberations. What happened next was kept secret for over a decade. At the time, District Attorney Alex Hunter announced that the grand jury had not returned an indictment. He said the evidence was not sufficient to file charges. He thanked the grand jurors for their service and said the investigation would continue. The public assumed this meant the grand jury had found no basis to charge the Ramseys. But this was not the full truth. In 2013, reporters discovered sealed documents that revealed what actually happened. The grand jury had voted to indict both John and Patsy Ramsey. The charges were child abuse resulting in death and accessory to a crime. These charges suggested the grand jury believed the Ramseys were involved in or had knowledge of JonBenét's death and had helped cover it up. However, District Attorney Hunter refused to sign the indictment. Without his signature, the indictment was not valid and no charges were filed. Hunter explained his decision by saying the evidence was insufficient to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt in a trial. The unknown DNA evidence in particular created reasonable doubt. Hunter believed that taking the case to trial would result in an acquittal, and he did not want to put the Ramseys or the Boulder community through that process without a strong chance of conviction. His decision was controversial. Some praised him for refusing to prosecute without sufficient evidence. Others accused him of giving the wealthy Ramseys special treatment. The fact that the true bill was kept secret for 14 years only added to suspicions of a cover-up or preferential treatment. In the midst of all of this, Patsy's health began to deteriorate again. In 2002, 6 years after JonBenét's death, Patsy's ovarian cancer returned. She had been in remission for nearly a decade, but the cancer came back aggressively. She underwent more surgery, more chemotherapy. The treatments were less effective this time. The cancer had spread. Doctors gave her a grim prognosis. She had months, perhaps a year or two if she was fortunate. Patsy faced this new battle with the same determination she had shown before, but this time, the outcome was more certain. She was going to die. She was going to die without seeing justice for JonBenet. She was going to die still suspected by millions of people of killing her own daughter. This reality weighed on her heavily. Friends and family described her as increasingly focused on her legacy, on making sure the truth would eventually come out, on ensuring that history would not remember her only as a suspected child killer. In the years between her cancer diagnosis and her death, Patsy continued to fight for her reputation and for JonBenét's case to be solved. She participated in interviews, though less frequently as her health failed. She worked with her attorneys on legal strategies, and she prepared for the end. In early 2006, Patsy's condition worsened significantly. The cancer was winning. She was weak, in pain, requiring constant medical care. She made the decision to return to Georgia, to her father's home in Roswell, where she could be surrounded by family. John brought her there in the spring. She was bedridden much of the time. Hospice care was arranged, she was dying, and everyone knew it. In this context, a final interview was arranged. The purpose was partly documentary, partly legal preparation. Patsy's attorneys wanted a clear final statement of her account, recorded while she was still mentally sharp, that could be used in future legal proceedings if needed. Patsy agreed. The interview took place in April 2006, 2 months before her death. Patsy was frail, her voice weak, but her mind was clear. She sat in a comfortable chair, wrapped in blankets, with John at her side. The interviewer was respectful, gentle, but thorough. The session lasted about 90 minutes, with breaks when Patsy needed to rest. The interview was not a media spectacle. It was not released publicly. Only small portions have ever been shared, and even those were carefully edited. But according to those who have seen it, the interview was heartbreaking and compelling. Patsy was asked to recount once more the events of December 25th and 26th, 1996. She did so with the same details she had provided for 10 years, her voice steady despite her physical weakness. She described carrying JonBenet to bed, tucking her in, kissing her forehead. She described waking up early, seeing the note, feeling her heart stop. She described calling 911, the terror in her voice. She described the hours of waiting, the awful moment when John brought JonBenet's body upstairs. She described the decades since, the suspicion, the accusations, the loss of her normal life. She was asked directly about the most incriminating evidence, the ransom note, her handwriting similarities, the behavioral inconsistencies, the theories that she had killed JonBenet in a moment of rage. Patsy addressed each one. About the ransom note, she said, I did not write that note. I don't know who did. I've said that 1,000 times, and I'll say it until my last breath. It wasn't me. About the handwriting analysis, she explained that experts also said she didn't write it, that the results were inconclusive, that similarity doesn't equal authorship. My handwriting looks like a lot of women's handwriting. We all learned the same way in school. That doesn't make me a murderer. About the behavioral claims that she didn't act like a grieving mother, Patsy became emotional. How is a grieving mother supposed to act? Should I have wailed in the street? Should I have refused to function? I had another child, Burke, who needed his mother. I had a husband who was also destroyed. We had to keep going, even when we wanted to die. People judged me for being too composed, but if I'd fallen apart completely, they would have judged me for that too. There's no right way to grieve when the whole world is watching and accusing you. She was asked about the theory that she had hit JonBenét during a bedwetting incident. Patsy's response was firm and clear. JonBenét occasionally wet the bed. So do millions of kids. It wasn't a big deal. I never got angry about it. I would change the sheets, change her pajamas, comfort her if she was embarrassed, and move on. The idea that I would hurt my child, that I would kill my child, over something like that is insane. It's offensive. It shows how little those people knew me or JonBenét. She was asked if she had any theory about who killed JonBenét. Patsy said she believed it was an intruder, someone who had been in their home before, someone who knew the layout, possibly someone who had attended their Christmas parties or worked in their house. She pointed to the unidentified DNA, the boot print, the open window. The evidence is there. Boulder police just didn't want to see it. They decided from day one that we were guilty, and they ignored everything that didn't fit their theory. The interviewer asked Patsy what she wanted people to know, what her final message would be. Patsy paused, gathering her thoughts. Then she said something that has stayed with everyone who heard it. I want people to know that I loved my daughter more than life itself. I would have died for her. I would have taken her place if I could. The fact that some people think I hurt her, that I killed her, is the second worst thing that has happened to me. The worst was losing her, but this is a close second. I'm dying now. I'll be with JonBenét soon, and I'll finally have peace. But I'm leaving behind my husband and my son, who will still have to live with these accusations. And I'm leaving behind a case that isn't solved. Someone killed my daughter. Someone got away with it. And that person is still out there. That's what keeps me up at night. Not the accusations against me. I know the truth. God knows the truth. But the fact that JonBenét's killer has never been caught, that's the real tragedy. That's the real failure. Not of me or John, but of a justice system that was more interested in blaming us than in finding the truth. Patsy was asked one final question. If you could speak to the person who killed JonBenét, what would you say? She thought for a long moment. Tears ran down her face. Then she spoke quietly. I would ask them, why? Why did you take her? She was just a baby. She never hurt anyone. She brought joy to everyone she met. Why did you do this? And I would tell them that they're a coward. That they've hidden for 10 years while my family suffered. That they've let innocent people be accused. And I would tell them that someday, somehow, they will be caught. DNA technology gets better every year. Evidence can be re-examined. The truth always comes out eventually. Maybe not in my lifetime, but someday. And when that day comes, I hope they think about the life they took. The little girl who would have grown up to be a wonderful woman. The family they destroyed. The decade of pain they caused. I hope it haunts them. I hope they can't sleep. I hope they can't find peace, because we haven't had any. The interview ended shortly after. Patsy was exhausted. She thanked the interviewer, leaned back in her chair, and closed her eyes. John covered her with a blanket. 2 months later, she was gone. Patsy Ramsey died on June 24, 2006, at 2 a.m. She died peacefully, surrounded by family, in her childhood home. The cause of death was ovarian cancer. She was 49 years old. She had fought the disease for more than a decade, with a brief remission in between. She had fought even harder against the accusations that she killed her daughter. She lost both battles. But those who knew her said she never lost her dignity, her faith, or her love for her family. Her funeral was held at St. James Episcopal Church in Marietta, Georgia. It was a private service, attended by family and close friends. Reverend Roll Hoverstock, who had been with the family since the morning of JonBenét's death, delivered the eulogy. He spoke of Patsy's grace under unimaginable pressure, her devotion to her family, and her unshakable faith. He said, "Patsy lived for 10 years under a cloud of suspicion that would have broken most people, but she never wavered. She never gave up. She maintained her innocence with dignity and strength. She loved her family fiercely, and she trusted that God knew the truth, even if the world didn't." John Ramsey stood to speak, but he could barely get through his prepared remarks. His voice broke repeatedly as he described his wife's courage, her kindness, and her suffering. He said the hardest thing about Patsy's death was that she died without vindication, without justice for JonBenet, and without the world knowing the truth. "She deserved better," he said. "She deserved so much better than what she got." Burke did not speak publicly at the funeral. He was 19 years old, a college student, trying to build a life away from the shadow of his sister's murder. He sat in the front row, quiet and composed, supporting his father. After the service, Patsy was buried at St. James Episcopal Cemetery in Marietta, next to JonBenet. The two graves sit side by side, marked with matching headstones. Patsy's grave marker is simple: Patricia Paul Ramsey, December 29, 1956, June 24, 2006. Beloved wife, mother, daughter. Forever in our hearts. JonBenét's marker reads, JonBenét Patricia Ramsey, August 6, 1990, December 25, 1996. A beautiful child, an angel returned to God. Mother and daughter, reunited in death, finally at peace. But the story didn't end with Patsy's death. 2 months later, in August 2006, the world was shocked by a dramatic development. John Mark Carr, a 41-year-old elementary school teacher living in Thailand, confessed to killing JonBenét Ramsey. Carr had been arrested in Bangkok on unrelated child pornography charges when he began talking to investigators about the Ramsey case. He provided a detailed confession, stating that he had been with JonBenet when she died, that he loved her, and that her death was an accident. He said he had drugged her, that things got out of hand, and that he panicked. His confession made worldwide headlines. Had the case finally been solved? Had Patsy Ramsey died just weeks before the truth came out, before her name could be cleared? The timing seemed almost cruel. But as investigators dug into Carr's story, it quickly fell apart. His confession contained multiple factual errors about the crime scene. He claimed JonBenet's death was an accident, but the medical evidence showed she had been struck in the head and strangled with a garrote. He couldn't accurately describe the basement layout or key details of the crime. Most damning, his DNA did not match the unidentified male DNA found on JonBenet. There was no physical evidence connecting him to the crime at all. Carr was extradited to Colorado, but within days, prosecutors dropped all charges. It became clear that Carr was a disturbed individual with an obsession with the JonBenet case. He had followed it for years, collecting news articles and photographs. He appeared to be seeking attention or suffering from delusional thinking. His confession was false. The real killer remained unknown. For John Ramsey, the false confession was devastating. For a brief moment, he had hoped that his wife's name might be cleared, that the world would finally know the Ramseys didn't kill JonBenet. Instead, it was just another chapter in the circus that the case had become. The media frenzy around Carr's arrest and confession showed how desperate people were for resolution, how eager they were for answers. But real cases don't resolve that easily. Real investigations require evidence, not just confessions. 2 years after Patsy's death came the development that would have meant everything to her. In 2008, Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey ordered new DNA testing using advanced technology that hadn't been available in 1996. The original DNA testing had identified a partial male DNA profile in JonBenet's underwear, but technology had improved significantly in 12 years. The new testing method, called touch DNA, could extract DNA from smaller samples and from surfaces where contact was minimal. Investigators tested the waistband of JonBenet's long underwear, the pants she was found wearing. They found DNA from the same unidentified male profile that had been found in her underwear. This was huge. It meant the DNA wasn't just in one location, possibly explained by transfer or manufacturing. It was in multiple locations, on different pieces of clothing, suggesting direct contact between JonBenet and an unknown male. This significantly strengthened the intruder theory. Based on this evidence, District Attorney Mary Lacy made a historic decision. On July 9, 2008, she issued a formal letter exonerating the Ramsey family. The letter was addressed to John Ramsey and stated clearly, "The Boulder District Attorney's Office does not consider your immediate family, including you, your wife, Patsy, and your son Burke, to be under any suspicion in the commission of this crime. To the extent that we may have contributed to the public perception that you might have been involved in this crime, I am deeply sorry. No innocent person should have to endure such an extensive trial in the court of public opinion, especially when public officials have not had sufficient evidence to initiate a trial in a court of law." The letter went on to explain the DNA evidence and why it pointed away from the family. Lacy stated that the presence of the same unknown male DNA in multiple locations on JonBenét's clothing indicated that this individual had contact with her during the commission of the crime. She expressed regret that the Ramsey family had endured a decade of suspicion and media vilification. She apologized for the role that law enforcement and the district attorney's office may have played in creating or perpetuating that suspicion. The exoneration letter was a vindication the Ramseys had sought for 12 years. But for Patsy, it came 2 years too late. She died still suspected by the public, still accused of murdering her own child. John Ramsey spoke to the press after receiving the exoneration letter. He was composed but emotional. "I appreciate this more than I can express," he said. "But my heart is broken that Patsy isn't here to see this. She lived with these accusations for 10 years. She died without hearing what I just heard. That's not right. That's not fair. She was innocent, and she died still being treated as a suspect." He paused, collecting himself. Patsy was a wonderful mother. She loved JonBenét with everything she had. The accusations against her were torture. And now, 2 years after her death, she's officially cleared. I'm grateful for that. But I wish she could have heard these words herself. John was asked if he felt vindicated. He said vindication wasn't the right word. JonBenét's killer is still out there. The case isn't solved. My daughter is still dead. My wife died too soon, under a cloud of suspicion. So no, I don't feel vindicated. I feel relieved that the official record now reflects what I've always known, that we didn't do this. But relief isn't vindication. Justice would be vindication, and we don't have that yet. The exoneration letter was controversial within law enforcement. Boulder Police Department did not officially endorse it. Some detectives who had worked the case disagreed with Lacy's conclusions, arguing that the DNA evidence didn't definitively prove an intruder, that it could be explained other ways, and that other evidence still raised questions about the family. The debate over the Ramsey family's involvement would continue, even after the exoneration. Today, nearly 3 decades after JonBenét's murder, the case remains officially unsolved. Boulder Police Department has investigated over 1,500 leads, interviewed over 1,000 people, and analyzed more than 6,000 pieces of evidence. They have pursued theories involving intruders, family members, known sex offenders in the area, and dozens of potential suspects. None have led to an arrest. The unknown male DNA remains the most significant piece of evidence. It has been entered into national DNA databases, compared against profiles from convicted criminals, and checked against familial DNA searches. No match has ever been found. In recent years, advances in genetic genealogy have offered new hope. This technique uses DNA databases like those used for ancestry testing to build family trees and narrow down potential suspects. It was famously used to identify the Golden State Killer in 2018, solving a case that had been cold for decades. Many advocates, including John Ramsey, have called for the JonBenét case to be subjected to genetic genealogy analysis. However, as of now, Boulder police have not confirmed whether this approach has been attempted. Some reports suggest the DNA sample from JonBenét's case may not be of sufficient quality or quantity for genealogy analysis, or that privacy and legal concerns have slowed the process. John Ramsey, now in his 80s, continues to push for advances in the investigation. He has remarried and has tried to rebuild his life, but he remains devoted to finding JonBenét's killer. He participates in documentaries, gives interviews, and works with advocacy groups. He has publicly called for Boulder police to turn the case over to an outside agency with more resources and advanced technology. He believes fresh eyes and new methods could finally solve the case. Burke Ramsey has largely stayed out of the public eye. Now, in his 30s, he has built a life away from the shadow of his sister's murder. But the case continues to follow him. In 2016, he gave a rare interview to Dr. Phil, in which he spoke about his sister, his memories of that night, and his family's suffering. He maintained that neither he nor his parents were involved in JonBenét's death. He has sued media outlets and television shows that have accused him of involvement, winning significant settlements in defamation cases. Burke's life was shaped by the tragedy when he was just 9 years old. He lost his sister, saw his parents accused of murder, and grew up under intense scrutiny. That he has managed to build any kind of normal life is a testament to resilience. The legacy of this case extends beyond the Ramsey family. It changed how child beauty pageants are viewed in America. It highlighted the dangers of media trials and rush to judgment. It exposed flaws in small-town law enforcement handling of major crimes. And it showed how quickly public opinion can turn against people, even without evidence. The case also raised important questions about DNA evidence, about what it can and cannot prove, and about how it should be weighted against other types of evidence. The JonBenét Ramsey case is a reminder that real life is not like television crime dramas. Cases don't always get solved in an hour. DNA doesn't always point to a clear suspect. And sometimes the truth remains elusive no matter how badly we want answers. So let's return to where we started. Patsy Ramsey's final interview. What did it reveal? What did it prove? In the end, it revealed a woman who was exhausted, who was dying, and who was still proclaiming her innocence. It revealed a mother who loved her daughter and who was heartbroken that she would die without seeing justice. It revealed someone who had been accused of the worst imaginable crime and who had maintained her denial for a decade. Did it prove she was innocent? No. Interviews don't prove innocence. But combined with the DNA evidence, the lack of any physical evidence tying her to the crime, and the exoneration letter issued after her death, it presents a strong case that Patsy Ramsey was exactly what she claimed to be. A mother who woke up on December 26, 1996, to find her daughter missing, and who spent the rest of her life trying to find out who killed her. I believe Patsy Ramsey was innocent. I believe the evidence supports that conclusion. But I also acknowledge that this case has complexities that prevent absolute certainty. And I understand why some people still have doubts. What I don't understand, and what I find deeply troubling, is how quickly society was willing to condemn her without evidence, how eager people were to believe the worst, and how little compassion was shown to a woman who had lost her child. Patsy Ramsey died on June 24, 2006. She is buried next to JonBenét in Marietta, Georgia. Her gravestone is simple and dignified. It does not mention the accusations. It does not mention the controversy. It simply identifies her as a beloved wife, mother, and daughter. That's who she was to the people who knew her. Not a murderer, not a monster, but a woman who loved her family and who suffered more than most people can imagine. If new evidence emerges, if genetic genealogy identifies a suspect, if JonBenét's killer is finally caught, Patsy Ramsey's name will be fully cleared in the public consciousness. But she won't be here to see it. She died without that vindication. And that is a tragedy in itself. JonBenét Ramsey would be 34 years old today. She might have become a veterinarian, as she dreamed. She might have had a family of her own. We'll never know. Her life was stolen from her on Christmas night, 1996, by someone who has never been held accountable. Patsy Ramsey never saw justice for her daughter. She died with that wound still open. But perhaps in the end, she found peace. Peace in her faith. Peace in knowing the truth herself. Peace in the reunion with her daughter that she believed awaited her. In Patsy's final interview, she said something that I think sums up her entire ordeal. She said, "The truth doesn't always win in this life. Sometimes innocent people suffer. Sometimes guilty people go free. Sometimes justice takes longer than a lifetime. But I have faith that in the end, in God's time, the truth will be known. I may not see it, but it will happen. And when it does, I hope people remember that I never stopped loving my daughter. I never stopped wanting justice for her, and I never, ever hurt her. That's the truth, and someday, everyone will know it." Those were the words of a dying woman. Words spoken 2 months before her death. Words that carry the weight of a decade of suffering. Were they the words of a guilty person maintaining a lie to the very end? Or were they the words of an innocent woman who had been wrongly accused and who wanted history to remember her fairly? I believe they were the latter, but I invite you to examine the evidence yourself, to look at the DNA, to read the exoneration letter, to consider what it would take for innocent parents to stage such an elaborate crime scene and maintain such a consistent lie for so long. And then ask yourself, what is more likely? That Patsy Ramsey was telling the truth, or that she was one of the most skilled liars in history, able to fool polygraphs, maintain consistency under years of interrogation, and convince those closest to her of her innocence, even as she died. If this investigation has made you think, if it's challenged your assumptions about the JonBenét Ramsey case, if you believe Patsy Ramsey deserves to be remembered fairly, then I need you to do something. Subscribe to True Crime Vault right now. We don't just repeat the same old narratives. We dig deeper. We look at the evidence that gets ignored. We ask the questions that need to be asked. Hit that like button to help this video reach people who care about justice and truth. And drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Do you believe the DNA evidence exonerates the Ramseys? Do you think Patsy died an innocent woman? Do you believe genetic genealogy could finally solve this case? Or do you still have doubts? Share your thoughts. Share your theories. Let's keep this conversation going, because that's how cases get solved. That's how justice happens. Not through assumptions and accusations, but through careful analysis of evidence and a commitment to the truth, wherever it leads. And remember, this isn't just a story. This isn't entertainment. This was a real 6-year-old girl who was murdered in her own home. This was a real mother who lost her daughter and then lost her reputation. This was a real family that was torn apart by tragedy and suspicion. These are real lives, real pain, real injustice. JonBenét Ramsey deserves justice. Patsy Ramsey deserved better, and this case deserves to be solved. That won't happen unless we keep talking about it, keep examining it, and keep demanding answers. Thank you for watching True Crime Vault. If you want more in-depth investigations into cases that matter, cases that shaped criminal history, cases that deserve to be remembered, you know what to do. Subscribe, watch, share. Until next time, keep seeking the truth, because in the end, that's all that matters.